Let's go.
I'll shut your eyes. Headstrong, coming back at you twice as
Arcade.
and I know the feeling that you get when you're never quite alone. And I told you to take no further steps, and you have to lose me. You'll see.
Enough!
Hello, everyone. We are almost coming to the end of the last day of the digital edition of IndieX 2023, and it's my second to last streaming session of today. So I'm kind of sad because of that, because I'm so happy for doing IndieX. It's really exhausting, but at the same time, I'm really happy for this. But all my sadness will be um, highly compensated by the fact that I think I know I already said this for a few times that I feel really lucky this year for being able to talk with the developers of some of my favorite games of this year. But this one, and whoever follows our podcast and our reviews, our written articles, know that actually this next game is one of my top 10 games of the year. So it's with great pleasure that I would like to say hello to Karen Hernandez and to Jay Balis. How are you guys? Thank you for being with us.
I'm doing all right, thanks. Yeah.
Hello, I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much for having us. Really excited about today.
Let me start with a really strange question, which is, so we're gonna play Cassette Beasts. My first question is, aren't you afraid that a huge chunk of the consumers will ask, what is a cassette?
Well, that's exciting because then it makes it kind of magical and mysterious. So, if they don't know what a cassette is and it's like a mystery kind of thing, maybe that's okay. That kind of fits with the game.
Why do I suddenly feel old?
You feel old if you also have a pen close to a cassette and then
Oh,
have people try to notice what correlates with both objects.
yeah. I know a lot of stuff from the 90s. So yeah, for sure.
So
I like to think that younger audiences will think it's like retro stuff is like cool instead of
Yeah.
like boring.
cassettes
Yeah.
are cool. Actually, I bought
think so.
I bought an album in cassette, I think 4 years ago. So a former Portuguese video games journalist, he has a really extreme black metal band, and he really loves the recording sound of cassette from the early 90s. So he's mimicking all the process of recording exactly with that specific technology, because he
Wow.
likes that how his music sounds in a cassette tape. And if I recall, the album is only sold on cassette, so cassettes
Very
forever.
cool. It's true.
Actually, there's someone in the chat asking, is that thing Star-Lord has in Guardian of Galaxy movies, but not sure what it does. Yeah.
We
well-
actually do have the soundtrack Cassette Beasts on
Whoa.
cassette.
Oh,
which is,
yeah, indeed.
Yeah, they're very cool. It's nice to have like, everything's so digital now. It's nice to have something very physical in your hands when it comes to that.
We also have vinyls, which is amazing and really retro and cool as well. So yeah.
Actually, I was going to
the
ask
same.
you if it would be ironic to have it in vinyl, but you already said you have it. So
As long as it's in cassette tape form, that's like
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Now in cassette and Blu-ray.
Why
So
not?
cassette. By the way, we have another guest. What's the name of our feline friend? We have another guest close to Karen.
Oh, my friend. Sorry, I was just confused, thinking just someone else is about to join us. This is Lilith. This is one of my cats, and she usually loves to well, get the attention. So whenever I'm streaming or having a meeting, she's there. So just please love her. She's amazing.
We already have a question. Where can the audience buy that soundtrack cassette and vinyl?
Yeah.
So we sell them through blackscreenrecords.com, who are a really cool label who do kind of like video game and anime soundtracks. They might be sold out currently. I know we're talking to them about doing a second run on all these, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on our social medias. I'm sure we'll post about it.
So I would suggest diving into Cassette Beasts. So I was just let me warn you all that I already told this to Karen and Jay that I'm starting a new file because I already played the game a few months ago when it came out. So let's go to Cassette Beasts. I have one technical question for you,
Okay.
especially in this day and age with all
Mhm.
the messy things that happened with Unity. My first surprise when I started Cassette Beasts a few months ago was that it was developed in Godot.
Mhm.
What was your decision for going with Godot, and are you happy with the result? Were you used to working with Godot?
It's a great question. So when we started, Bytten Studio, for the project of Cassette Beasts, it was my colleague Tom and I, and then so when we were kind of talking early on about kind of making a game, like a big funded project that would get like work with a publisher on, it was kind of a case of what can we do to make the best game that you can make with two full-time developers. And we kind of tried out a few different engines. Obviously, we went through Unity, we looked at Unreal Engine, and we looked at Godot. And then there was a sense. I'm mostly an artist and a writer, and Tom is technical lead, so he handled all the programming. And there was kind of a sense of Godot is kind of this up and coming technology that is kind of very flexible and very easy to use and isn't bogged down with a lot of like complicated features we don't need. And that by utilizing Godot, we'd be able to produce a lot of stuff kind of like very fast, which is really good for us because that means that we can iterate very fast, design things very quickly and test them very quickly. And it just helped the process to become quite fast and kind of streamlined for us, which meant that we could just kind of focus on making stuff for the game instead of like trying to tackle with the engine. I mean, one of the advantages of Godot is that it's open source, which means that if there's a bug in the engine, Tom can just jump in and fix it or tweak this thing or add a new feature to the engine. And that kind of flexibility allowed us to kind of not worry too much about the engine constraints, but more about like we could just kind of focus on the stuff that mattered to us.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sorry, I will give me. I think I will need to go to the settings, but give me just one second, okay? Jane, by the way, you said you were two people. Did you were only two people until the end of the development process?
No, we've remained with two of us the whole project. Obviously, we work with other artists. So our animator Michael worked with us on animating almost all the monster sprites in the game, and then our musician Joel did the music. But in terms of like full-time members of the team, there was two of us. But, it's the game's very collaborative effort. So we had a lot of people helping out in a lot of ways, and then Raw Fury were able to handle a lot of the logistical and production challenges. So yeah, it is and it isn't a two-man project. I think it takes a lot of people to make a video game, ultimately.
It's like a baby, it takes a village.
Takes a village.
So we everyone's now watching the prologue of Cassette Beasts. So we fell into this world. The beginning
Yeah.
actually reminded me. I'm a huge Pokemon and Digimon fan, by the way. I loved how I felt that vibe of
Yes, very much
what
so.
happened with us because we suddenly appeared in this strange world where not digital, but creatures that inhabit cassettes are fighting each other. So what was your did you feel I believe you're also fans of these two big franchises?
So kind of how we started and how we kind of came to be working on this is that we kind of discussed what kind of game we want to make. As I said, we kind of wanted to work on a project in Godot, and then we had to think what kind of game do we want to make. And one thing we kept coming back to was like the monster collecting RPG. And it all kind of came down to one theory, which is, so Call of Duty is really successful, but no one is afraid of making first-person shooter game.
Yeah.
Call of Duty. But Pokemon's very successful, but everyone's afraid of making a monster collecting RPG because of Pokemon. So there was this sense of maybe there's like an opportunity here to make something new and interesting in this space that isn't necessarily like, you know, it's not trying to be like a copy game, mechanically kind of like thematically very different from everything else that exists in this space, but something that appeals to, you know, fans of Pokemon, fans of Persona, you know, Digimon World is a really good game that I grew up with on PlayStation 1. So there's a lot of different inspirations that we kind of took. It all kind of came together with, let's make our own one, you know? We love these games, we love these franchises. What can we do with that? And one of the early questions we have is like, well, what's our angle? Because, you know, in Pokemon, in Digimon, it's all about like, you have like a pet. It's kind of like a pet simulation game, you know? You get this cute animal and it's your best friend. And that's been done before, so we wanted to know what our angle would be. How do you catch monsters still, without it just being like collecting an animal and making it fight other people's pets, which is quite strange. And we kind of landed on this idea of you transform into monsters by recording them onto cassette tapes with a cassette player, and then when you put the headphones on and listen to that tape back, you turn into the monster. And that was like, oh, this is a cool idea, because suddenly it changes everything. Because if you and your, you know, party members are the monsters, then you are the center of attention, which means there's going to be a lot more of a focus on the characters and their personalities, which is great because we kind of love games that have a lot of focus on like the characters and the personalities involved, and that kind of emotional core to it. So it all kind of came together with a lot of like things we wanted to achieve and kind of weird ideas we had.
So I've been feeling, especially in the last, I believe, 16 months, lots of monster collecting indie games, and I've been buying and playing almost all of them because I'm trying to fill a void, to be honest. But the thing I've been feeling, and this is why, after spending, some say it was more than 100 hours, but I think they are exaggerating. But after spending a few dozens of hours in Cassette Beasts, I think by far it's the most original monster collecting game I have ever played. And that this is why I decided to invest so much in knowing this world, because it's exactly like you said, Jay. It's a risk to do a monster collecting game, but because there are some in RPG Maker that emulate the feeling of the first generations of Pokemon. But then again, sometimes you feel, if I'm playing this, I'm not playing the original. And this is exactly what Cassette Beasts does, that is completely fresh. Because not only we actually transform, and there are mechanics associated with the fact that we don't have pets, we actually transform ourselves into these beasts. And how important I felt is, for example, how you used the capture mechanic and make it a vulnerability to our own actual character, not the beast that we used to combat.
I think once we kind of had this idea of, okay, if there's one person and they're the one transforming, then that kind of starts lending itself towards various mechanical aspects. You start thinking, well, actually, that means that maybe status effects persist across monsters, because you're the same monster. So if you're poisoned, then you change. You're still poisoned.
Yeah.
Or, okay, so if you have to record a monster, you have to go back to human form, which means that they can still hurt you, which means that, okay, that means that humans have their own health bars separate from the monster forms. And then I think once we got so inspired by this kind of base idea of, you know, transforming into monsters and collecting the tapes to transform into different forms, everything kind of came together, and all these ideas were very kind of exciting to discuss. And they all just kind of came together quite naturally, you know. It kind of sparks your imagination in the development process.
And the other thing, really curious, after playing every single Pokemon game and the majority of monster collecting games, Cassette Beasts is really challenging, you know. Like I felt I was never too strong, or my beasts were never too strong for all the side quests I was trying to face. Was it something conscious on your mind, like
Yeah,
to
I
not
mean,
make it
so
too easy?
Part of it was we wanted to make a game that wasn't like, I mean, when you think about Pokemon, that's a franchise that is primarily aimed at a very young audience. That just happens to have an older audience as well. Those games are balanced towards its youngest players, and that's fine. That's the target audience. And we were thinking, well, if our target audience is a little bit older, we can make a game that's a little bit, more adult thematically, but also at the same time, it's a little harder as well. I like to be challenged a little bit in games. So the battle system is, we have this kind of new AP system we kind of came up with where progression of your moves is not linear. You're not just using the weakest moves at the start of the game and then only using the best moves at the end of the game. You kind of have to decide when you use your stronger and weaker moves. Little choices like that started to pop up. And then, we wanted to make a game that you could, tell your friends about. If you have a particularly hard encounter and you beat it, it's more exciting. So, I don't know, we just kind of made the game that we thought would be the most interesting to us, I guess. Because, we are fans of the genre as well. So we thought, well, what would we want to see? And let's try and make that version of this,
The other thing, we have the boss fights, for example. They are not only conceptually and also artistically different, and eventually in the story we will understand why. But all of them are like their own challenge. Like, we have to understand how the boss works. There are no two equal boss fights. Was it like an additional challenge for you to try to maintain all the boss fights pretty fresh mechanically?
Yeah, I mean, because of the system is the actual battle system is lends itself well to a lot of different kind of strategies. We ended up kind of coming up with some fun strategies and saying, okay, what can this boss do? What can this be the gimmick they use? Some of those were just inspired by what the designs of the monster were, and some of them were just like, oh, it would be cool if there was a monster that did this kind of thing. And yeah, we just wanted to make every kind of fight feel like kind of an exciting set piece. And yeah, as you said, the bosses have a particular... They're a bit different. I'm sure we'll talk about them when we get to that point. But yeah, they were a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun kind of designing and conceptualizing all of them. And Tom had a lot of fun making them really hard to fight.
Yeah. And I remember one of them. I can't recall the name now, but I thought the mechanic was really interesting, since we have 3 spots in...
Yes.
Like, we have 3 spots in our party, and then the enemies also have their own placement in the fight. And you had that specific boss where in between turns he would change position. That would mean that we were attacking a specific placement, and that would be hitting the minions or the add-ons, and not the actual boss. So there was strategy involved in every single fight, and I enjoyed it a lot. It's not just mashing the strongest attack that we have. I think in Cassette Beasts you really have to understand what kind of creatures you have and what's the best combination you can make between them.
We definitely wanted to make it so you don't just get by just using your strongest move every time. You have to learn how the kind of chemistry system works. I mean, as a way to describe this, when your Sirenade form, it's an air type, so when it hits a fire type, rather than it doing extra damage because it's super effective, air is super effective against fire, it triggers an effect called Extinguished, which adds debuffs to the fire monster, or a fire monster that uses a fire move on a poison type monster will cause it to melt and create burning smoke. And these kind of chemical interactions are where a lot of the kind of meat of the gameplay comes in. And I think it's okay that there's so many of them and they're not easy to remember, because if you broadly remember them, over time you start to kind of
it would be broken.
This.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's okay in an RPG to not quite understand how everything works straight away,
and have to adapt.
You kind of get the gist of it. You kind of slowly start to learn.
Getting into that train of thought you just said about changing the chemistry during the combat, something I thought it was really ingenious on your side was especially when the game advances and we have different kind of creatures, not only that we capture but also on enemies that are able to change, let's call it the type of
Yeah.
ourselves or the enemy. So that adds another level of tactical and strategic thought to the combat, and I really love it.
Yeah, it's good fun. I think there's a lot of like wild and strange strategies you can do. And I think kind of coming up with like kind of interesting ways to kind of resolve conflict in this game is a kind of a fun part of the game. I think it's quite easy to end up with broken strategies, but I think if you've worked for it, that's like fine. I think it's quite fun in an RPG when you manage to like break the game by being clever, and you know, people will break a game and make it as hard or as easy as they want for their own enjoyment. So I think giving the players the tools to kind of have any kind of strategy that they want over time is like quite a fun way to approach things.
Yeah. Another thing I enjoyed, and I have to admit, it was a mix of feeling myself lost, but at the same time, I liked that kind of the exploration it made me have. And let me tell this to our audience, is the fact that we have this. If we can theoretically go anywhere in this map, although the grid is now completely hidden with the fog of war because we haven't reached all these points. The thing I thought it was really interesting, and eventually there will be obstacles that will not be able to traverse, for example, water or a small hill, and we have to think, what am I missing? So eventually in your own exploration, we have almost this kind of Metroidvania layer, because depending correct me if I'm wrong, I most of the things I just discovered by exploring. Like I was never pointed out like, hey, you want to climb that hill, you have to go pick this specific creature. So how mechanically this will work, and we will have the first example here with that flying cassette beasts, is some cassette beasts will actually award us abilities to our characters that will give us the possibility of exploring the map, like reaching areas that we couldn't reach before in a truly Metroidvania thinking. Like you decide to mix lots of interesting things. It's a risky move. Were you comfortable in accepting all this risk?
It's challenging. Again, we just kind of thought like, what would be the most exciting version of this? So I think when people talk about games in this genre, often they think that developers, you know, they take Pokemon or they take Persona or Digimon, and they say, all right, that's our starting point. What do we change to make our own game unique? And rather than do that, we just kind of stripped everything down to basics and said, right, we like the RPG mechanics of these RPGs. We'll take that. And then when we think about exploring the world, we think about, well, what games do we like exploring the world in? And we thought, well, we like games like Zelda. So, you know, something like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past was a closer reference for how we built the world map compared to, you know, another RPG. So we thought, okay, well, how do you have in a Zelda game, you know, you get these, you know, items that let you traverse the world. You know, sometimes there's roadblocks. What can that be on Cassette Beasts? So then we ended up with this solution where you get abilities from certain monsters, and one thing that does is that it rewards you for catching monsters, but it also rewards you from catching any monsters, because you're kind of thinking, oh, well, maybe if I get this monster, I'll get an ability, or you see a monster having an interesting behavior, and you think, well, what if that means that I get that behavior if I catch it? So it kind of gives you an extra incentive to kind of seek out everything that there is in the game. It kind of feeds back into that loop, essentially. So it's a case of taking the elements that we like and want to explore further and seeing how do they fit into the new framework that we're building together here.
Sorry.
Something else that I think what you're saying, like this, you made us discover everything by ourselves, because I can't remember any written tips or like a huge pointing finger saying, hey, go capture that creature and you'll be able to dive onto to swim. And I think that was an interesting thing because it made me explore and discover things by myself. And I think it was one of the most interesting things in Cassette Beasts.
It's tricky because sometimes players will want some direction. So we have this system called the rumor system, where if you are, if you're feeling kind of stuck and don't know where to go next, maybe you do need someone to say, hey, go and record that monster so you can swim. So you can actually go back to town and speak to NPCs, and they will give you these rumors that basically get you on the right track. It's tricky because some players really want a lot of direction, and some players want no direction.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out how do you solve that problem.
And how do you balance
in
it?
one game and make everyone happy.
Yeah.
So we gave people the option of seeking out, hints essentially as to where stuff is, but also we didn't force you to do it. And that's so it's kind of a challenge of making a game that kind of fits to our vision of what a cool world to explore would be, whilst also acknowledging that not everyone has the time to kind of catch every single monster they see. If they're stuck behind an obstacle, they might get stressed out or disappointed and not carry on. So it is really, game design really does feel like it's a series of kind of here's a problem, how do you solve it, and how do you solve it with the tools that you have in the toolbox, because it's not always efficient to come up with a whole new system to solve one thing.
I was talking, and we were talking previously about the difficulty. I think something else that contributes to I think the challenging side of Cassette Beasts is that everything is expensive, and we have to think wisely on how we use our own resources, be it by resting in the middle of the field, because we can use those camps like we did a few minutes ago, but at the same time, for example, to craft the cassettes or even the let's call it potions that we have to heal our beasts or our characters. Everything is expensive, so nothing is for granted. And for someone who is used to playing this genre, where you end up a run or a playthrough like millionaire with hundreds and hundreds of items in your bag, I always felt that the challenging side of Cassette Beasts made me think really wisely of how I was managing not only my characters and my party during the exploration, but also how I used my resources.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things we wanted to do was make it so you're always going back to town, because cool stuff happens at town. It's where you can have conversations with characters. Some story events happen in town. It's where you can buy new items and stuff. We wanted people to go back to town, and not just play the game as kind of like a camping game where you're just jumping from camp to camp. And one of the ways we did that was, in the early game, it's very hard to get resources, so you are going back to the middle of town a lot. Towards the end of the game, you probably get enough resources where you can get any items you really want, but the early game experience sticks in your mind a lot. So I think we wanted players to feel like it's kind of a loop of, you go back home, hang out with your friends, chill out at the cafe, go out on an adventure, come back home, chill out at the cafe.
Yeah.
And again, because the game was kind of centered around one town, so rather than a game where it's about kind of going on a linear path quest between like town to town and doing adventures there, we're kind of coming back to one core town at the center of the game and kind of finding new things there and getting new experiences there. So we wanted people to come back to town, and I think part of that is the managing the resources.
And something else that I hope I'm not spoiling this to everyone, so
No.
I'm not going to go too much into specifics, but I think everyone saw that we befriended Kaylee, but she will not be the only partner we will have in this game. So part of that mission of going to the city, it's because these friends that we make along the way, they will also have their own quest lines that we can follow, and we need to swap who is coming with us in the exploration side. So there's lots of optional content, but I think it just enriches the experience and how we actually drink everything that this world is giving us.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, because you turn into monsters, the monsters themselves become the kind of core of the experience, and you're monsters, so you and your characters in your party are the center of the attention, and making these characters the focus was a huge part of this. So, Kaylee is like the first kind of partner character you meet, but then there's multiple others, and they themselves have their own like quest lines. They have their own, personal challenges to overcome, and their new personalities that you can kind of connect with. There's kind of like a social link system where you can rank up your friendship with them by doing quests and kind of like hanging out with them. And I just personally think that characters are the center of what people like in games. When I think about RPGs, the thing people talk about the most about the RPGs they like are hanging out with characters they like.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. And I think sometimes the story in an RPG can be complicated or underwhelming, or you're not that interested. But as long as the characters are fun to hang out with, players tend to be on board with what you're doing. So I think making the Cassette Beasts have this kind of strong sense of personality was like really important to us from the very start. We really wanted this to be a game about making new friends and just hanging out with them and going on adventures together.
Someone is already saying, glad the game is out already so I can play it. And yes, I know that I'm sorry, some of our friends are already pasting the link to the Steam page. So yeah, do yourselves a favor, especially if you are fans of the genre. This game, I said this a few times in the last few months, this is a mandatory game for whoever likes the genre, okay? You really can't miss out. And by the way, everyone, prepare yourselves to one of the most, let's call it different aspects of this game, which will happen now.
Pretty good stuff, isn't it? I mean, early on we had this. So our previous game was a game called Leonard's Inception, which is kind of like a creepypasta version of Zelda, and blending that kind of like Nintendo kind of cute pixel art game aesthetic with like digital horror works really well. And we were like, we have to have that aspect of it in Cassette Beasts. It has to become like this almost horror game at certain points. And I think when you think about like fan culture around things like Pokemon, so much of it is about how spooky certain parts of those games are, especially when you're a kid. And the contrast of how cute something is and how like safe it feels with when you start like making the game feel broken in some way can be really kind of impactful. So I had a lot of fun designing the Archangels, who are these boss monsters, and making these boss fights feel like you're fighting these things that you can't even comprehend almost.
For me, it was a huge surprise because my motto is going tabula rasa, and when I pick up a game, like I barely watch trailers because I want to discover everything by myself. So when I reached this specific point, I was like, what? Because everything was so different. Obviously, the contrast in terms of art direction between the Archangels and the rest of the world, the lettering you use, the effects you use, like everything sounded like a ominous glitch happening on top of this pixel art and cute game. I was like, oh my god, what happened?
Yeah.
I was
It's
just
really
quoting
unexpected, honestly.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge surprise for everyone. And sorry for everyone that is watching that we, in a way, spoiled this aspect
There's
for you.
plenty more where this comes from, I think. I mean, so when we designed the game, we also kind of thought about it as like, it's a game coming to Game Pass, it's a game that will have demos. How do you catch people's attention in a demo or like just the prologue of a game? And kind of concluding the opening of the game with this kind of set piece was like a really kind of fun solution. And of course, that also gives you the fusion, which is, kind of almost like the headline feature of the game. So yeah, I mean, as this little tutorial shows you there, you can fuse. So for anyone watching who doesn't know, the big selling point of Cassette Beasts almost is that you and your friend, you transform into monsters, but also you can fuse, and any two monsters in the game can fuse together and make a new monster that looks like both of those monsters together. And you power up, you get both your move pools, and over time you can like increase the power of your fusions. But yeah, it's this like super form mode that you go into, and early on, we were saying, okay, well, we're making a monster collecting game. What makes our game different to everything else on the market? And we kind of came up with this fusion idea. Because, people love to draw like two monsters like fused together.
Yeah.
What if we actually managed to do that in a game?
Like there are lots of fake ones like that. Yeah, that was exactly my idea.
Oh, totally.
I felt like, well, this is like turning into official something that fans of the genre usually do for fun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also because you're both humans in monster form who are then fused, then you kind of have this weird question of like, oh, well, I guess like this is like it's almost like a romantic thing or like a very personal thing to fuse with a person. And then we kind of play around with that, and it kind of lends itself into the kind of narrative aspect of the relationships you have with the characters.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of weird, and I think people like it when a game is weird and not afraid to be strange. It is really weird to like turn into a giant floating sheep bat monster with a girl that you've just met. And the characters know it's weird, but you're all real people. You all talk about it, so it's quite funny.
Best first
And I think
date
it's
ever.
interesting. Strangest first date ever. Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is you get to talk about.
just a small aspect I
awkwardness.
liked. It's a game about cassettes, but then when we meet the archangels, all the lettering is like a VHS recorder
Yeah.
type, and I was
It's
like,
not quite
oh,
cassettes, it's like VHS cassettes. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, oh, this is a really nice detail. One of many.
Yes, indeed.
Funny part of this is this whole sequence where you actually talk about what just happened was a request from my wife, who said that she felt like you needed to like talk through with Kaylee what just happened because so much just happened, and then previously this part didn't happen, and she felt it was very strange that you just like jump back into the story
Yeah.
without talking
Oh,
over.
that's really cool. That's an amazing detail.
Yeah. But if you think about it, we try not to dive too much into it in other games or even other series or books because we are still in the suspension of disbelief. But taking into account that we apparently are a human that falls into this this island, I think it kind of makes sense. Something as strange as this, that people would end up talking with each other. Maybe we would imagine the three of us would be and Lilith. We would be walking around the strange island, and suddenly this glitchy creature appears. I think we would talk about it afterwards, or would we just move on with our lives? Like, so did you do your taxes this year? Oh yeah, I did.
I think as well is that we really wanted to sell the idea that the format of like, you land on a mysterious island and have to find your way home. That's like quite a common archetype. The way we wanted to set it apart was it's not that you are in like a fantasy world and everyone else there is a fantasy character. It's that you're from the real world, and also everyone else in the game is also someone from the real world.
Yeah.
You're not the only person to have magically ended up here. You're just the next person to have ended up here. Kaylee is from Earth. She's from Ireland. She's just a real person, just like you are in the story. And we really wanted to kind of make the characters feel like they're as real as you are, almost.
Yeah. I truly feel the character aspect of the game. It's one of the best things for me, at least, because I want to explore relationships and build them. And I think that also one of the things that contributes people to feel Cassette Beasts is like a more adult game than Pokemon, for example, because it adds like more layers and with this narrative, and I think it's a really, really cool addition, honestly.
Yeah, and as I said, when you think about like Pokemon or Digimon, the monsters are they are the center stage.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that you care about. Because our game is not about like pets. We have to think about we have to make the characters interesting, keep them as the kind of center of the attention. So we're meeting Eugene here, and he's kind of the next character that you can meet up with and also partner up with, and he has his own monster tape and his own adventure. So as you know, as we come out of the opening, the game now opens up. So from this point onwards, you can kind of go anywhere in the world you want, do any quest line, skip any quest line, and it kind of it's challenging again because we had early on we had some players who felt like the opening they knew what to do, and after that point it was like too complicated. It's too open. There's too many choices to make. So really balancing it in terms of how much direction you get. Ooh, you've thought it.
Yeah.
You're gonna go for the Rogue Fusion. You might be able to take it on.
I'm level 9. May I?
You could try. I mean,
Yeah.
if you lose, yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be unfortunate.
Actually, I
You
wanted
can also flee
to
if
show
it's too
this. I wanted this to pop up because I wanted to also to show this kind of challenging Rogue Fusion combat. By the way, something that I we were really talking about the Archangel fights. So I don't know if everyone noticed. Aside from each, this was the let's call it tutorial Archangel boss fight, but everywhere all the others will have their own powers and their own strategies that we have to take to defeat them. So something really curious is that we use our action points to do more advanced skills, but the actual capacity that Archangels have, it's like a counter. After 10 APs, they will do this really highly destructive skill. That's another layer of difference between the regular combats and then the Archangel fights, isn't it?
Yeah. So again, we wanted to, it to feel like this ticking clock almost. You're kind of afraid because you kind of want to know, that in like a few turns it's going to do like a super move on you. So you have to kind of plan ahead. But at the same time, you almost kind of want to see it, I think, because seeing a super move in an RPG is really cool. I think people want to see like a monster, like a big boss monster, do a really cool animation. So it kind of gives you something to look forward to and also something to be scared by, almost.
Yeah.
This is a rapid heal. Oof. Oh yeah, bite does a lot of damage. Although you got the accuracy down there with the.
So Jay, can you give a context to our audience? What differs this Rogue Fusion challenge combats to the other ones?
Yeah, so Rogue Fusions essentially use the same fusion system that you can do with your partners, where you can have two forms kind of fuse together, and they become these kind of really challenging optional world boss monsters. Ooh, okay, you've defeated the traffic crab. Very exciting. You've got Dominoff left, but you've also got Fusion. And because these guys are two monsters fused together in the wild, they're a lot tougher than the usual monsters, and they can really hit hard. But then beating them, you get a special currency called, what's it called again? Fused material, that's it. And then you can spend that on upgrades. Ooh, this, again, so remember I was saying before that every combination of monsters is unique. So now you've got this is a half Banshee, half Dominoff. Is that like a Ban Moth? And yeah, this one looks very different to the previous one. And every single combination is unique as well, which is really fun because I've never seen this one before. He looks really good, actually. I quite like him.
Yeah.
He looks very, very goth, actually, with that black fringe.
Technically speaking, how did you do it? You actually have this huge Excel table of like you did like a checklist of every single character you needed to visually create, or how did you do it?
Well, no, so they're not unique. They're kind of procedurally generated. So imagine that there's like it kind of combines parts and uses those parts together. Is the best way to describe it. Almost like a Lego system where you're making Lego parts for each monster. Because there's so many combinations. I think there's like 14,000 combinations that you can't really draw them all, or especially not animate them all. So we use this kind of procedural system that allows us to kind of put things in necessary, and then the game engine is able to then produce the actual fusion forms. And then also one of the things that makes the fusions even more exciting is that when you fuse, the lyrics and all the battle themes come in. So it kind of gives it that anime power-up feel.
I did it.
Nice, very good.
Congrats.
That was pretty close. Haley had like 1 HP left, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if did you guys in the chat notice what happened? So when the beast that we're incarnating, let's call it that, is defeated, we get in a vulnerable state. So every single damage we take, it's actually our character that is taking and not the beast. So when the battles became more challenging, we actually need to manage all the cassettes we have, because either character can use the 6 cassettes we bring with us. So we really need to manage all of this. It's then again not just a simple fact like all of us are used of spamming the strongest attack. It's really not like that. We really have to think about the battles that we're doing, even with regular beasts that we find. I struggle with some of them, yeah, and I wasn't even that low level comparing with them. So yeah, I know. We know we have to end our streaming session, but I would just be playing this and catching some new beasts. Out of curiosity, even if we had multiple enemies in a fight, we can capture them, can't we?
Yeah.
We can. The only, if I could recall, like the Rogue Fusion, it's the case that we can't actually capture the different beasts, can't we?
Oh, you can't. You have to break them apart. Once they're broken back into the 2 monsters, you can then record them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I don't know why it was grayed out.
Maybe you didn't have enough cassette tapes.
I don't know. By the way, I didn't mention, but I don't know if everyone noticed when we went to the cafe and we asked for the menu, the item to heal, it's a pencil and it's called Rewind.
Yes.
which is a really nice touch. I think Jay, I can congratulate you enough and the team because
so
the
much.
game is really ingenious, and I've been playing this genre since Pokemon Blue in Game Boy, and I've been passing this passion to my kids too, and they watch me play Cassette Beasts, and they help me, and we play together, and I think even with some competitors that are in the market, for sure your game is the most creative and the most original game I have ever played in this genre, and
Thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
and I'm really happy. I think it really deserves the how impactful it was for me, that it will be certainly one in this year, like 2023. Cassette Beasts will certainly be on my top 10 of 2023. So
I really appreciate
thanks a lot,
that.
everyone.
I mean,
really.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And I
Thank
would
you.
also like to thank you for both you and Raw Fury for submitting the game to IndieX. For us, it's a pleasure for having Cassette Beasts as
It's been really fun.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
I-
our pleasure for sure.
I can't recall. Are you coming to the physical event in November?
I'm not sure if I don't know if Raw Fury are. I personally am not able to. But...
Okay. Because I don't have my Excel sheet here, so I'm just sorry.
I'm
Too
not.
many.
No
I'm not
worries.
quite sure, honestly, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Either way, Karen and Jay, thanks a lot for being with us, and
No worries.
congratulations
Thanks
and
for
the
having us.
best of luck for Cassette Beasts.
Thanks so much.
I believe it's doing really well and it deserves. So we just have to wait for whatever is in the future for your studio, and really congratulations. So everyone, don't forget to go wishlist Cassette Beasts, wishlist, or since it's already released, go buy it. Believe me, it's a mandatory game for the genre.
And
Thank
we have
you
a
all.
DLC out. So
You have a DLC
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Oh,
a
When
very
was-
spooky one. Yeah.
when was it released?
A couple of weeks ago, actually.
Yes.
Oh, but I've been away from the world organizing
yeah,
all
there
of
you
this,
go.
so I don't know what's happening in the world. But I will have to dive into the DLC, a really spooky one. So yeah, I think it's the season for that.
Yes.
Totally is.
Then again, thank you both and Lilith for being with us. And
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank
stay
you so
tuned.
much.
Stay tuned because we'll be back in 10 minutes for another game. Let me just check it will be Quit Today. It will be the next game. Thank you for being with us, and stay tuned. Just 10 minutes.
Right. Oh no, you won't dare stop and stare again.
Let's go.
I'll show